at Microsoft. Anybody not know what a program manager is or does? Feel free to raise your hand. There are no stupid questions. All right. So what that means is that, yes, I have 25 plus years of software development experience. I owned my own company for 10 plus years. I worked in a variety of technologies, but as a program manager, I spend the majority of my time talking to you and to customers and to anybody who is using or wants to use our technology to better understand what might be frustrating you, but also to understand how we can improve things, whether it's tooling or SDKs, to help you achieve more, right? It's really all about helping you be successful. Which I appreciate, because when I was running my own business, that's really what I did. Yes, I enjoyed using certain technologies more than other technologies, but I like to say that I married one wife. I did not marry Apple. I did not marry Microsoft. I did not marry Google. Like, I owe them nothing, right? Right? You know, I use the best technology to solve the problem, and of course there are some personal preferences to it, so I will often use the one I prefer. But so all that to say, then I go back and I collaborate with our engineers, and I help them to kind of understand and empathize with what you're dealing with, you know? I mean, so that when you're dealing with Visual Studio and it's not doing what you want it to do or what it ought to be doing, and you're cursing the sky and you're ready to take your computer and throw it out the window, you know, I make sure that our teams understand that and that they feel that pain just like you feel it. And you know, that helps us to get solutions out to you. So I do a fair amount of coding myself, but it's mostly me trying to put myself in your shoes, because I've been in your shoes. You know, again, 25 years of software development. I've worked in the enterprise. I worked a lot in advertising and marketing. I worked with a startup that was acquired by Shutterfly. So has anybody here used or ever have used Shutterfly? Yeah, a few. How many of your wives have ever used Shutterfly? Yes. They order the calendars, or we all. I mean, pretty much you can do anything. You can get your face on a mug through Shutterfly, which is kind of funny because your mug is a mug, and then you're putting it on a mug. Yeah, that Tim Hortons donut is working. Sugar Rush. Sugar Rush. So, yeah, that's a lot more about me than I needed to probably. Hey, what's up? Better late than never. It's all fine. Don't worry about it. Because you can walk into any room silently, right, with that. Yeah, so the first session today, so I primarily do work on the Xamarin Mobile SDKs. That's my day job. So that's iOS, Android, Xamarin Forms in particular, which how many of you are using Xamarin Forms regularly? Okay, quite a few. How many of you are interested in learning about Xamarin Forms? Okay, more. So this first session is nothing to do with Xamarin Forms. But we have some experiments that we're doing in the open. We're all about the open source, mostly all about the open source. But it's some collaborations and things that we're doing inspired by some things that you may be seeing out there in the wild. So anybody do React Native? I'm all about the raising the hands and finding out what you're doing. React Native? Anybody ever touched React Native? It's okay. It's a safe place. Flutter? Anybody ever touched Flutter? Play with it? Okay. Swift UI? Yeah, a few of you? So, you know, there's some really interesting things happening there. And what can we learn from that? And are there things that we could bring into the .NET ecosystem that would inspire us to do something interesting and useful? And how far could we take that? And certainly we have a lot of experience with Xamarin, with Forms, with Silverlight, and in WPF and UWP. And we can learn from these experiences and push them forward. I always like to drop the F-bomb in my presentations. Flash. So I was a Flash developer for many, many years, and Flex, the other F-bomb. And so, but the thing is, for all of its sins and things that you may cringe about that, there were some really good things about that development experience and the things that you could easily achieve with it. So, you know, it would be ignorant of us to ignore these other technologies and not learn from them to create something better, right? So, with that, this is the very first time that anybody outside of a couple of hackathon streams has ever talked about what this project is. It's not a product. I want to give all the caveats. This is an experiment being done on our own time to see what we might be able to do. We are not shipping anything, but it is open source. It is up on James Clancy's GitHub, and I'll share those links out. Okay, so with that, I'm introducing Comet. I had a friend of mine who's a fantastic designer come up with some concept logos, because what's the point of doing something if you can't have beautiful artwork, right? Where's Emily? Emily, isn't that right? Yes. Emily is responsible for all the wonderful design that makes this event really what it is, right? So very cool stuff. And she broke her foot. You broke your foot?
Kind of, I think.
Kind of, I think. You must be a runner.
Yes.
Yeah, so am I. I understand exactly what you mean. Okay, so enough of that. Let's have some fun. So this deck, I'll go through a couple of slides in this deck, but this is really meant to be more of a vehicle to interview people. We go through, has anybody ever done one of these interviews with us? It's called a concept value test, where we do something like this and we make you tell us all about you and what you do and things like that. And then we ask some other general questions, which I'm not going to ask you. But here's kind of the scenario and what we're thinking about. We're thinking about this space. Of course, you're always asked to build multiple platforms, mobile, desktop, and web. And you want to be able to do it quickly, efficiently, with tooling that is consistent, stable, and works, right? And maybe you're intrigued by Fabulous. So if you're not aware, Fabulous is a model view update framework written in F# by Don Syme. And it's based on Elmish and Fable. And so that's why the name became Fabulous. But essentially, it's all code. And then it's got a hot reload component to it, so you're just updating it. But it is F#, and so the typical thing that we have heard from people when they are interested in Fabulous is, yeah, but I'm a C# developer. I don't really want to do F#. And that's understandable. So what is the concept behind Comet? Comet is a platform-agnostic control toolkit. So it's all about those controls. If you've used Swift UI, then you kind of see this at work there, where you have this DSL essentially, where you can describe your controls in your UI tree. And then it's very easy to diff that, to see the differences between the change you make while you're coding and what's actually running in the app, and then you can more effectively hot reload it. And you can do some other nice things by having that, I wouldn't necessarily call it abstraction, but you have essentially a shadow DOM, which is a very common thing if you have any web development experience. And then you can share it universally across multiple platforms. So what platforms are we talking about? Of course, we have to go to the universe. So this is the universe as it exists primarily for Xamarin Forms, but as an example, here are all the different platforms that you might be able to travel to on a Comet, because you're going to ride the Comet. We're going to get to that's my first demo is ride the Comet. And so yeah, if one or more or any of these are in your things that you want to be able to hit, then Comet would be a toolkit that would allow you to do that and provide a development experience that is much more similar to all the aforementioned technologies. So things that are in the toolkit today, a bunch of this stuff. What are the tools that we're using? It's VS Code, it's C#, and it's Comet Reload. It's an extension for VS Code. So we're looking to achieve a bare minimal install. Now, there are some dependencies underneath this. Of course, it is .NET running on iOS, so you're going to be using Xamarin iOS. So you want to make sure that if you go to play with this, that you've got a good base Xamarin install, and you'll be good to go. So yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Let's go look at some code. Where's my cursor? I've noticed this with Catalina. My cursor goes missing, and then I have to do the zoom out, zoom in thing. Anybody else running Catalina? No other brave souls? It's actually been pretty good. All right, so let's minimize this. So let's look at the bare bones experience. So I've got my terminal. Wow, you can't see that at all. You can see that? All right. So let's make sure I clean up. So of course it's terminal, and so we're doing a VS Code first experience. So .NET New. Everybody familiar with .NET New? Yeah. So I can do .NET New, and it's going to tell me all the templates that I can now use. And if we scroll up to the top, because it's obviously the first and most important, is Comet app. So now I can create templates right here from terminal. And so let's do a .NET New. We're doing a Comet app. And let's give it a name of Ride the Comet. Here we go. So now we've got that. Let's open it in VS Code. Make the code bigger. All right. So we have two projects here on the left-hand side. Woohoo! So I've got my library project with just the main page in it, and we'll get to that in just a second. And then I've got the iOS head project with all the iOS things that you're used to seeing, app delegate, et cetera, right? No big surprises there. Now, a couple of things that we've done for the VS Code extension. Go away, Doc. It recognizes that I have a CS proj that is using Comet. So it automatically selects that as my startup project, which is awesome. And then it has a device selector so that I can choose what I'm going to run on, right? So in this case, I can do this at runtime too. I can just start debugging. But I'm going to go ahead and select the simulator that I have, which is there. So of course, one of the first things that needs to happen here is I need to restore my NuGets. And it did pop up, but it's gone now. So let's go ahead and restore our NuGets. There's probably an easier command in here. Isn't there an easier command? Let's see. Restore. Restore all projects. See, it says restore all projects, but then it only does it on the library. So there's still some learning to be done with how VS Code does things. If you came expecting me to know everything this morning, you'll be sadly mistaken. I like to be transparent, okay? You know, we're all learning. And so that's why I say there's, of course, you know, your teachers all said this in grade school, right? There's no stupid questions. Maybe they didn't use the word stupid, but, you know, we're all adults here. So, yeah, so we'll stumble through this together. Cool? So that one restored, but then this one didn't restore. So there's probably something wrong there. And that's like not us. That's, I think that, what is it, OmniSharp? I think it's part of OmniSharp. But we all know how to use MS Build, right? Yeah? Well, MS Build masters. So we can go into the Ride the Comet iOS project, and then we can call MS Build /t:/restore. Now restored. Woo-hoo. All right, and then Command Enter because we're all VS Mac users, and that's how we start our apps. Yeah. Yes. How many are Mac users in the room? Your primary machine's a Mac. Okay. So that means everybody else is using Linux. Is there something else? Hey, look at that! We have an app running. That didn't take me too long, right? So of course, in order to have a valid working thing, we always have to have a clicker and a counter, right? So let's look at the code real quick. Right quick. So again, it's the main page. And there's not much happening here. It's a view, okay? So that view is going to represent any view, anything. In this particular case, it's going to end up being a UI view controller. And then we have a body method. And the body method is what is going to be rerun or at least reevaluated anytime a change is made. So that change might be me doing a hot reload change. The change more often for a running app is going to be a state change, right? So I've got a text control, and then I've got a button control. You see that we're basically using all these extension methods to style this stuff. So you, of course, can achieve some of this through properties, but the extension methods here make it extremely convenient to be able to modify and extend things. So if you've ever tried to extend an existing framework that you're using and you're like, oh crap, it's an internal, or I can't get to it, or I have to write a lot of code just to be able to modify one property, Comet is architected to overcome that and to make it as easy as possible for you to override anything. And not only override it, but if you hit something and you're like, oh man, I'm doing iOS and Android, but I don't like the way the Android implementation was done. Those Microsoft guys, no man, they're just bonkers. You can easily just go address that in your code with like 4 or 5 lines of code. It's not a big deal. You don't have to create massive renderers all over the place. So I'll show you a bit more about how that all works. Let's see. I'm thinking this isn't going to work, but let's just see if my hot reload is working. So there's something with the new instance of VS Code that it's not working, but never fear.
Did you save it?
You don't need to save it.
No.
Yes, you don't need to save it. So this is a debate, right? When you have a hot reload dev experience, do you want it to wait for you to save? Or do you want it to evaluate, and as soon as it sees something valid, update the screen?
Well, what did you decide?
See, the thing is like, no, we can't agree. But yeah, I talked to James about that recently, and I think I was as harsh as to say I hate it. Hate it. But I understand. I do understand. So it's probably gonna be a preference. That's the way these things work. So. I don't know why the hot reload is not working in this particular instance, and I'm not wanting to waste time figuring that out. So let's do this. Let's minimize that puppy, and let's go back to, not that. I had a bunch of VS Codes open. Which one? This one? Yeah, let's do this one. So I've got Shoot the Comet, the brother of, or the sister of Ride the Comet. It's all about the Comet, you guys. Why pick a cool name if you can't use it? So I'll go ahead and run this instead. And of course, it's going to come up blank. But I tested this, and hot reload was working out of this extension. So these are very, again, it's open source. We started working on it like a month and a half ago, maybe. And so it's all hot bits, super early, right? I mean, we've done like 2 or 3 versions of the VS extension. VS Code wasn't even a thing before like Wednesday, okay? That's where this is at. But I wanted to show this to you mostly to get your interest and to see if this kind of dev experience is something that you like, and if you like the architecture and the way things are going with this. And if you don't, just kind of keep your mouth shut and don't talk to me. No, I'm kidding. I want to know if you're like, hey, why would you even bother investing in this? I mean, we would want to know that too. All right, so it's blank, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say not text, text. We've got that, and of course that's too small. So we're going to go adjust that font size. You can see I've got IntelliSense for all this stuff. Now you can read that, right? Pretty cool. So let's go back to, did I save that here? Yeah, of course that's going to bark at me because it doesn't have the count. So we need to add a state value. So let's talk a little bit about state. Oh, wow. This is, you learn this when you start live streaming and live coding. Your fingers don't know what they're doing. So count, something like that. There we go. And now I've got my counter back. So here's what's happening with state. So this is model view update. So what model view update does, let me ask this a question. How many of you are using Love MVVM? You don't have to actually love it, but are you using it? Okay. How many of you are using React? Like reactive UI, React patterns, right? Okay. So in model view update, rather than having a binding syntax and managing your one-way, two-way, three-way, I don't know how many ways can you bind, and all that jazz, You can still have view models in a model view update, but typically you don't. So the way it works, it's one directional, okay? So your UI makes an update to your state, and that state it knows that it's a state object. It's not just a variable, and so it inherently knows to notify all the things that need to happen. It is not so it's going to use a one-way direct path to updating your UI. And so, as I mentioned, the body method is what gets reevaluated anytime state changes, and Comet is responsible for doing a diff on what changed and optimizing how it updates the UI. So it's because it's one directional and there's less to go wrong. And this is something that I've heard from people that use MVU and so MVU model view update. I'm going to use that. It's a new thing. Internally, we use these phrases, and then we realize that not everybody knows what we're talking about. So what I hear from the Fabulous community is, hey, we shipped an app, and with model view update versus MVVM, we find that we have a lot less state-related errors, a lot less null references, a lot less junk. And there's a lot fewer. It's too early on a Saturday. Concepts to kind of get your head around. So it's pretty straightforward. So that's another one of the value propositions of going with an architecture and a development experience like this. There's less to figure out. And we hear that a lot in some of our other technologies, that it's like, oh, coming to this, I have to know this, I have to know this, I have to know bindings, I have to know this markup syntax, I have to know this toolkit, and then I have to know the native toolkits, blah, blah, blah. So again, trying to simplify all of that. Okay, so let's build something a little bit more interesting, shall we? So I want to build a login screen. Cool? Everybody's building login screens these days. When we shipped Shell, like the first major thing that people were asking was, how do I add a login page to my Shell? And it's like, you add a login page. But it was a little obscure. So let's build one and style one. So I don't need this. I'll keep my button. But of course, any good login page needs to have an image at the top. And let's see, I've got a URL. Well, let's just go find something. Who should be our photo for this? Who should we use? I don't know. Who's a famous person from Toronto?
Drake? No.
Drake? Is that what you just said, Drake?
The first one that comes to mind.
I didn't know he was from Toronto. All right, let's pick one. Oh, he looks too serious in this one. He's smiling in this one. Let's do this one. All right, so we're going to copy this image link. All right, so we'll see if that eventually decides to load or not. Oh, it's HTTP. No, we need something that's HTTPS. I don't want to go screwing around with security. Anybody? If I can't, there we go. HTTPS, good. I was going to say, if I can't find somebody, or one that we're going to have to choose, or maybe it's just not going to load. It's too big. Let's keep going. There we go. So, internet. Of course, that's really cool and everything, but I'd rather it was a circle, because don't we all need more circles in our lives? So now we've got a circle, and that's cool, but we need more shadows in our lives, right? Yeah, you like? But we could make this a little bit bigger. I guess I can tweak that. It's just, it's just loading. It's thinking about it. I don't know. Why? Yeah, there we go. It's just the internet. Ooh, so we can add borders. I actually haven't done this yet. So should I do this? I can do this. Why type code? I don't know what it's going to do. Yeah, so I can, of course, mess around with my shadows and do things like that. And then if I want to change the color of my shadow. No. Maybe the color is in the shadow. Is that what it was? There we go. Yeah. Although it wouldn't be red. What is Drake? He's more of a purple guy. I don't know Drake. Drake and I haven't hung out. Cool. All right, so we got that. Of course, we need some text fields. No, I just started typing markup. It's not right. So we've got text fields. Let's see, what do we need here? Oh, well, I don't really have a binding object yet. So let's do enter username. Come on, type. And then yeah, that's all I need. All right, so got that. It's ugly as all get out. And then we also have secure fields. So, I mean, is everybody okay with this? Like, should I have to stop and recompile, or are we good? I mean, I'll stop and recompile if it'll make you feel better. Yeah. All right. So now I've got a username and a password, don't I? Don't I? Who knows? But I think we can do better than this. I've got a cool entry field with an icon that I want to be able to use. So, no, not that. What am I doing? I got some cheating over here. I'm going to cheat because I don't want to type all this jazz. So I've got this bordered entry view. So I'm going to bring this in because it's awesome. Let's see, I'll put it down here at the bottom of the file. Now I've got this bordered entry view. But I also want to have a username and a password to the objects up here. I don't need my account anymore, but so read-only state string username. And then we need this also for the password. Wow. I blame the Tim Hortons. All right, cool. So I've got some state. And then, so rather than this, we're going to do a new bordered entry. So this is username. And then, is it just username? I think it's just username. And then what was the last thing? Oh, the icon. Yeah, so I can't remember which icons I had here. No, not those. Oh, here. So I was going to show you this. So, so I've got Font Awesome in here, and I included Font Awesome in the templates because I think it's just super helpful to have icons at the ready, right? Especially when you're iterating early on. Yeah, so I included that in here. Now I've got a website that I like to use. We're done with that, Drake. Where's my other browser? It's called Glyph Search. If you guys haven't seen this, it's super easy and useful. So the lights just went out, right?
That's by design.
All right. And make sure I'm not having a moment. All right, so like, whoops, person, just like a person. Oh yeah, the astronaut, that's what I like. So I can copy that, and that's going to give me the little hex value. You can see this over here. I can choose what to give me. And I'm focused in on Font Awesome, but they have a bunch of other icon libraries also. So I don't know who did this website, but they're a freaking genius that saves me a ton of time, and I don't have to remember these things. There is another way to make it easier to bring all these values into your project. If you just upload a font file, it'll generate a C# static class for you, but we're not gonna mess with that. All right. So there is my bordered entry. Maybe I just totally broke hot reload. Maybe it's the secure field. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's you. Who knows? All right. Maybe we are. I teased it about not rebuilding, and now it's pissed at me. All right. You know what? I should probably look at my output. See if it's actually telling me anything useful. You never know. It could be barking at me. So we do have some output somewhere that will typically tell us what's going wrong. but whatever. Let's just go ahead and restart because we're not scared. Of course, it's all iOS here. So as I showed before, there are a bunch of backends to this thing. iOS is the one that we're kind of prototyping on, and it's faster. So, you know, there we go. There's my username. Come on, Drake. You can do it, Drake. Bring it.
He's busy yelling at the referees.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah.
Oh, is he a basketball player?
He's a basketball observer.
Observer. He's a musician, right?
Yeah. And a professional basketball fan.
Professional basketball fan.
Yeah.
Cool. So if I want to set the size of this boarded entry, there he is. He just shows up late to the game. So he's got to make a big entrance, right?
Fashionably late.
Yeah, so I can size my stuff. I don't like that, so I want a height. Everybody knows that for fingers, 44 device pixel and whatever, you know, is kind of your good minimum. So don't be making those small buttons and fields. Everybody's hands are small like mine. No, they're not. Okay, so I've got a username. And we'll do this, but bless you. Let's see, we need like a lock, some kind of secret thing. Let's do this lock. Is that cool? We'll do that. All right, you guys are getting the picture, right? This is pretty cool. This is pretty useful. You love it, you hate it. Yeah. Woo. More yeehaws and woos. You guys are actually giving me perfect practice for when I go to the Netherlands because Dutch folks they just sit in silence. Sit in silence. They'll come talk to you afterwards, but during the presentation, like if you even they crack a smile, you're like, yeah. Awesome. All right, so so there's that. Now let's go see what else I had over here. Oh, so I think it would be important to show some of the cool clipping stuff we can do. Where did I lost my, there we go. So I'm gonna add a clipping path, okay? So I've got a new puzzle piece. So rather than clipping to the circle, I'm gonna give it a new path. Oops, path. And I'm gonna pass in the puzzle piece. Where's my simulator? Here we go. All right, now Drake's a puzzle. He's puzzling.
He is.
Yeah, right. So let's see. There's a nope, not that. This. Yeah, scaling. Path scaling aspect fill. Basically, there we go. All right. Kind of over whatever. So there's actually a VStack has spacing, so I'm gonna do some spacing. Spread that out a little bit. I don't know why this is being such a pain. Let's kind of constrain this a bit. So we'll do frame width of, I don't know. Puts Drake in a box.
Do you have extension methods for margin and padding for each one of those views?
Oh, look at Drake, you just got tall. So, sorry, what?
Do you have extension methods for margin and padding to granularly control it for each view item there?
Yeah. So you see that I've got a little extra spacing here. That's because there's padding here, which I'm going to get rid of because I don't like it. So there's work that needs to happen on that layout because padding currently, in my opinion, behaves like a margin.
Okay.
However, it's some of these things are inspired by, like when we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do with it, we kind of defaulted to what we saw SwiftUI doing. And depending on where you put your padding and your margin, like with a button in particular, right? If I want to have the padding be around the label of the button, I'm pointing at my screen. If I want it to be around the label so that it spreads the button out, then padding should be inside, right? But for other elements, padding treats it like a margin and pushes things away, which I think is just weird. It didn't make any sense to me. So we're going to be revising that. So yes, and margin is not yet a thing because it's just padding. But again, the really cool thing is you can easily add it. How much more time do I have? 15?
You have half an hour.
I have half an hour. Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. All right, you're stuck with me, and you get me again later today. I don't know if you all knew that.
Yeah, after lunch.
Yeah, after lunch when we're all like, we'll have to do some jumping jacks or something. All right, this is weirding me out, so I'm gonna go back to.
Yeah, David, I don't know if you want to leave like specific time for questions or questions along the way, or
Yeah, let me.
it's up to you.
Let me just finish this up real quick because I want to do the state, and then I'll take a break and we can ask questions. And then I've got a bunch of other demos that we can just kind of take a look at to give you an idea. So cool. So write your questions down. Don't forget them. And we'll come back to them in just a minute. All right. So I've got username and password, but of course, if I start typing that in here, oh, it's currently bound to the same thing. Well, hey, that shows you that the data binding behind the scenes is actually working. It's kind of funny. But you also see that my password's clear text. So first things first, let's fix what we're binding to. So you should be a password. And we'll do that password. Cool. Now we have distinct, but it's not being masked. So what I need is a bordered secure entry, right? Of course. So I'll take my bordered entry. My formatting's off. As with everything, having good formatting helps it all make sense. Oh, I see. Oh, it's way off. All right, whatever. All right, so bordered secure entry. So really the only difference here is that we need this to be a secure text field. What are you barking about these other things? That's why. All right, all happy, we're good. We're going to take that bordered secure entry and we will replace our other bordered entry. Yeah. So now username and then password is a secure entry. Awesome. But we're now incrementing nothing. So what I want to do. Let's see here. Yes. So let's replace the login. I'm just saving myself some time there because, I mean, come on. You can only watch so much of my typing. So I need an output string, no problem. So I just add a little debugging here so that you can kind of see what's up. And this there is actually a bug that I'm about to show you. All right. So now you can see that I've got a click handler, and I'm outputting to another variable, which is a text that I just threw at the bottom of the stack. So here's my click handler, right? So you can see that I can treat my state values in line. I can update them like that. Of course, you saw the click increment previously and how that works. So it's all very straightforward. Of course, I did all this in one file. You wouldn't do this for a larger application. All these things would be broken out and you'd separate them as you normally would. And it's more of an atomic design pattern. So again, if you're familiar with Flutter, React, all those different patterns, you're typically building smaller pieces and then bringing them together. And the nice thing about having a platform agnostic toolkit like this is that you can do that without worrying about creating a bunch of nesting and craziness in the native UI. Again, this is all still native. However, wouldn't it be cool if we could go beyond native? Let's go with, this is our sample gallery. That's a really exciting sample right there, wherein we drew a circle. It's very exciting. So wouldn't it be cool though if we had SKIA controls so that we can make sure that we have drawn UI that is consistent across all the platforms that you're targeting. So you can mix and match native controls and SKIA controls. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing. Of course, you can draw your shapes and things like that. So real quick, I'll show you. Oh, what happened to that? Oh, what did I do? There we go. That one's better. So this is a more complex example. This is based on a sample that Rendy and Charlin did for a Xamarin Forms project. And I thought it was such a cool looking thing that we should totally borrow it and use it as a sample here. So yeah, I mean, you can see these are all native controls. And we've got some data binding happening, and we've got a more complex layout, right? And so I can show you that layout real quick, and then I'll pause and we can have some discussion. Not that one.
Debit card.
Yeah, so you can see that there's quite a bit more going on here. This is a bunch of V stacks and H stacks. We also have grids that we can use to lay things out. And we have Z stacks, V stacks, H stacks, Z stacks, grids, and I think there might be a flex. But again, you know, it's all just starting to come together. And you can see in this particular case, my state object is a complex object. So we come over here and look at my binding object and all my getter setters. And I was working on the logo late last night and I didn't finish it, so I'm not going to show it to you. Yeah, so there's that. And then one more thing, and then I'll stop. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an indication of what it looks like to extend and to customize. And there's a whole bunch of styling stuff. I'm not going into a lot of stuff. But we've got all these environmental variables that you can use to set your base styling, and then you can set your styling on particular controls. But let's say that I have this this one right here, and I want to be able to control my line breaks. So I added this method for line break mode. And what that looks like is I need to expose it as an environment variable. Pretty easy, right? And then I have an extension that I create. And so this is going to manage, this enables me to use it in code in a nice fluent way. That's really all this class does. It's creating the extension method, right? So that I can turn on and off that. And then the actual work for this is a property mapper. So I've created the property mapper for that environment variable to this. And then this is all the code that makes the line break mode happen for iOS. And I can easily do this for Android. And you can see that I've made some decisions in here as to how and when I want that line break mode to happen. It's not just a pass through of a property. I've done something that I'm always going to do everywhere on my labels on iOS. You may disagree with that. And the great thing is all you need to then do is come in and override that method. You can do it in your app delegate. You can do it wherever you want. Or you could completely replace that property by inserting your own environment mapping. So, we'll have more samples on how to do that, because I'm sure that this still looks like a lot of code. You've only seen it for the first time, but it really is that straightforward and that simple. My hope is that because it's this lightweight in this layer and in this toolkit, that it's much easier and less frustrating to contribute to it, because it is an open source project, right? So it's, when you're only needing to contribute an extension method and a property that's mapped, it's like, wow, that's pretty straightforward. That's pretty easy. So with that, I'll take a break. I mean, I could show you more and we can go deeper, but what kinds of questions are you thinking of? Yes?
I have two questions actually. I can tell the first one you won't like, or at least will be asked a lot. When I look at it, it reminds me a lot of Flutter, and I love the idea of Flutter, alternative to Flutter with C#, but in place of Dart. But what main differences you would say is between Flutter and Comet?
So there are several main differences. The first and foremost is that it's native toolkit, right? So it's all native control. So you have access to all, not only the native APIs for your device stuff, but here's something that Flutter, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, maybe they can do this now, but last I checked, they could not. They couldn't do that.
Actually, I was trying to do it, planning to try to do it, but
Yeah. Last I checked, I mean, maybe they can now, right? Because it's all a Skia canvas, and so I'm sure that they're working on it if they haven't done it already. So there is that, and I don't say that to bash Flutter. Flutter's really cool. Again, you know, I did Flash work, so I totally understand Flutter. It's drawing. It's I wish that they had basically a drawing tool that I could use because then I could do basically Flash. But I think that I appreciate this for the reason that it is native, but it still affords me the ability to do Skia if I want to do Skia. The other thing is that this is, again, I think, you still need to prove this, but I think this is a whole lot more lightweight and easier to contribute to. And that's really my hope. When I first saw this from James Clancy, and I'll bring that up real quick so that I don't forget. This is where it lives. GitHub Clancy Comet. And James is gonna start. He's another program manager with us. A lot of the coolest stuff you ever see coming through Xamarin starts on his machine. We love James. So you can come up here and check this out, play with it. But when he first showed this stuff to me, there is a video here too. Maybe I'll just play this while we're. Yeah, there was some music. I don't know why. But you can see it's gonna start going really fast because who doesn't like to? I mean, we all type this fast, right? So yeah, I mean, the native is definitely the first thing. But you know, just because, I mean, I don't know. I have no problem being compared to any other toolkit. If they're doing cool stuff, then why not? I mean, everybody's doing React programming, and that started at Microsoft, and Microsoft like does the least amount of React programming in terms of in .NET, right? You know, we've got a lot of teams doing React Native and React.js. So
Comet has more options and
more options. Yeah.
flexibility in coding.
I've always felt that way about Xamarin. I mean, really, we could take Flutter and make it a backend to any of these things. We could have a Comet Flutter backend. And it.
Second question?
Yeah.
Very fast. Also, actually, with my experience with Flutter, how do you what is the best way to handle data persistence in Comet? Because Flutter right now pushing with files and SQLite.
So again, this is super new, right? Can you tell anything about me by the things it's telling me to go watch? Because I can't. I don't know what this stuff is. John MacArthur, rebukes Joel Osteen. That's awesome. The Pope, poor, rich and poor. I don't know what this stuff is. That tells you nothing about me. So this is super early, right? So I mean, the easy answer is because it's .NET and it's running on Xamarin iOS, anything that you use in any other Xamarin thing for data persistence, that plugin works here. I've got Xamarin Essentials in this app. So anything that Essentials provides to me, I can use, right? Because Essentials is cross-platform .NET. So anything that's already out there for Xamarin developers could be used in Comet. As a matter of fact, I should probably show you this. So one of the really nice things about this toolkit that makes it extremely portable, if we look at the iOS, or maybe I should show it in the simpler example over here. If we look at the app delegate, it's very basic. So of course I've got my reload in it. But this is my main page. It's just main page to view controller. Every view can go directly to whatever the native platform is. So you could have a really customized button and just say to whatever the native thing, and it'll give you that native control. So there's a lot of portability, mixing and matching. So you can use Comet as just your common DSL to go anywhere. I mean, that's kind of what SwiftUI is trying to do for the iOS ecosystem, for the Apple ecosystem. So if you want to have one code base to get you to iOS, iPad, which is still just iOS, Mac OS, I guess maybe at some point Watch, but you can use SwiftUI to do that with a common language. So where Comet expands upon that again is the power of this is pretty amazing. We have that in some of our other technologies for embedding. The UWP, WPF crowd finally did it with XAML Islands. I say finally, I mean, I don't know the trajectory of that thing. But I just know that Forms had it earlier. Yeah.
VS Code is how prototype-ish right now?
Well, it's coming together. So like Wednesday was like the first build that I could use without compiling things myself. So we just started packaging, but the other thing is it's all up on not all the extension work is up there, but as we're revving on the extensions, they're up here on the releases. So if you
a lot more reliable in terms of like errors and stuff like that.
In terms of what?
Like errors, warning errors.
So, when it comes to warnings and errors, we probably still need to do a better job of messaging those things. I did not show this, but debugging is working. I can set breakpoints. Did I show that previously? Let's see here. I can just start this up and set a breakpoint. VS Code, I don't know. It's still yet to be determined just how reliable it is for this kind of development because nobody's doing it yet. Right? This is brand spanking new. Maybe I didn't hit my breakpoint. Maybe I chose the wrong one. Oh, maybe it's still coming. Anyway, you get the point. Other questions, other thoughts? Yeah.
Has this completely removed the need for any kind of like XAML UI or anything like that? Or is that still available in this for?
So this is code only. So this is biased towards that developer experience.
Right.
Yep. I mean, XAML could be parsed if you wanted to.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this is, so if you look at the different frameworks that we currently have in the project, yeah, right here. So these are all the platforms. No, they're not all the platforms. Oh, here it is. Well, there's Forms, WPF, UWP, Mac, iOS, Android. I'm showing iOS as it's the easiest and it's also the most mature at this point, which saying it's mature is like, my baby rolled over for the first time, So, yeah.
So I see all the platforms that you have over there. Is there any plan to maybe port this to the web as well?
Why? Why would you want to do that? So we have other forks and prototypes that take this in that direction, as well as explore coming into it from other web technologies. So if you have a web technology and you're like, I want to get this on mobile, that's another way in which Comet could meet that need, because it's a very flexible, easy to plug in toolkit. So not only is it a developer experience in this programming model that I've demonstrated, but it is, it's a toolkit that other things can use. Other thoughts, questions? How many of you would go download this today? Okay. How many of you would wait and download it in a month?
Is it already in production or?
No. So this is just an experiment. It's an open source experiment to see if people like it, as well as an experiment for us to see where we can take it. Right. when you're working on new features, you want to dig into it and see how it feels and experience it yourself. So that's a lot of what this is. It's an experiment. So it's an experiment with a cool logo. And an emoticon. It has the emoji. You cannot undervalue the importance of having that puppy right there. Yeah, it says meatball. It's a Comet. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that this is kind of different to Xamarin Shell, but if this ever comes to life and to production, I mean, would it be renamed to Xamarin Comet, something like that, or will keep separate as another solution for Mac, Microsoft base, to do first-class applications?
So this is an experiment from .NET. This is not a Xamarin experiment. So it's not, of course it's using Xamarin in the same way that Blazor uses Mono and Uno uses Xamarin and Mono, and you know what I'm saying? So this is, and that's one of the reasons, I know I'm wearing the Xamarin too, but I'm wearing my .NET t-shirt to represent the .NET. So the audience for this, quite frankly, are the people that are interested, again, in Fabulous, in SwiftUI, in Flutter, in React Native. That crowd, those who would not consider going necessarily XAML, they would probably choose a JS solution or a TypeScript solution. But this is .NET, so it would appeal more, we think, to that audience. And it's a developer experience that I quite like. I mean, I know that I also enjoy XAML, but I'm one of those weird ones that I don't. Again, I married one wife. I didn't marry XAML. I didn't marry JavaScript. I didn't marry C#. That joke never gets old. For me, anyway. Does that help answer that? Yeah. So we're positioning this as an experiment in the .NET space. And again, it's the first time I've ever talked about it. And of course, this is a Xamarin Saturday, so makes sense that we would have Xamarin-related questions. Other thoughts, questions?
I know I wasn't paying super close attention.
No, you were not.
No.
It was noted.
Yeah. Did you demo anything around animations?
I didn't. Would you like to see an animation? This is going to blow your mind.
Yes.
So I mean, that's one of the things when you're I mean, because as we all do, we just start building toolkits on the weekend, right? But you're like, okay, what does a toolkit need to be able to do? It needs to be able to show a map. We've got a map. It needs to be able to make phone calls. We're making phone calls. And of course, it needs to have some level of animation. So, oh my gosh, at the presses. That's some PowerPoint level animation. That's good stuff.
Behind and above.
I don't know. Is anybody asking questions online? Do we have the YouTube?
Yeah, we are monitoring it.
I don't want to ignore the fabulous people that may or may not be watching on. Yeah. So there is some prototyping happening here as well, and so the questions are like, what should that look like? What should the syntax be? And what we pretty much know what an animation framework needs to be able to handle, especially having done Flash and Silverlight. Right? Was that your only question?
That was my only one to start. Like I said, preoccupied.
You are preoccupied. Let's see, what other demos do I have in here? So all these demos are in the samples. So when you go up to, I'll show it on GitHub. So up here in the samples, go into the samples project, and all of these are here, as well as all the comparisons. These are all ported from the SwiftUI stuff. And these are all just, okay, what can we do? And what should it look like? And does it work? And do we like it? And how does it perform? So I would love it if you would pull it down, take a look at it, try to play with it. Don't kill yourself if you run into like, oh man, my hot reload's broken. Because we're constantly revving on that stuff. But and if you know of developers who are like, hey, I would totally go with .NET, I love C#, but I'm going React Native instead or Flutter instead. We would want to talk to those people. And it's not about oh, you have to use Microsoft, don't use those. But if they love C# and they want to be working in .NET, then I want to try to help have a solution that meets those needs. Because I, as a developer, would want that. Yes, sir.
So we're working with a couple companies and .NET developers.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know about Xamarin.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a challenge.
Yeah.
It's just the marketing of it. So we explained it to them, and they were going to go React.
Yeah.
But we switched them over to Xamarin.
So I think that a lot of what we depend on is good citizens such as yourself being in the right place at the right time to advocate for it, right? I mean, I certainly, again, before I joined Microsoft, I had my own company, and I would find myself in those conversations a lot, and that was even pre-acquisition, so they still had a marketing engine, and they were selling, right? You were still paying for licenses. So yeah, I mean, of course, anything we can do to get more energy and excitement around Xamarin helps, because then we're all talking about it, and when we're all talking about it, people take notice. The reality is that there's probably not going to be some huge marketing campaign come out of Microsoft. It's just not the way it works. So it does depend a lot on you, the community, hopefully liking the solution and then advocating for it.
So what's the business driver for a company to, say, for example, take existing React Native projects or Flutter projects and turn around Xamarin? What would convince them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would start by asking, well, what are your pain points in those? I mean, everything's going to have pain, right? I mean, it's just like we were talking last night. You know, you or maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was you. I don't know. We were talking, but it was like every solution is going to have things that go really, really well and things that are going to be struggles, and some of those struggles are common across all the solutions that work in the same space. It's like, which one do you want to own, right? So, you know, I would have to ask questions about, well, why isn't it working for you? I mean, there's probably shops, I know there are shops that are doing really, really well with React.js and all, you know. So if they're happy with it and they're doing well with it, I wouldn't try to take them and move them to .NET for the only reason of getting them on Xamarin. But if they have .NET experience or they want to be in the .NET ecosystem, they want to have a smoother on-ramp or share knowledge of their .NET experience between their web and their Azure and, you know, and all the other things you can do with .NET, then that would be a good value proposition and a reason to migrate them in that direction.
Is there a migration strategy of some sort that is known?
You know, pretty much when it comes to going from React Native to Xamarin, it's a rewrite. Unless they have a bunch of native components they've written in Objective-C and Java, in which case those are more easily bound or ported. I mean, it's really up to you to decide whether to do a binding or to port them. Like I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about Twilio, and apparently you have to write a bunch of UI code to make that stuff work. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, that's not really a Xamarin unique problem. That's, if their library expects you to write UI code to use the library, then you're going to have to do that no matter what language you've chosen. So, other questions? I will be around all day. If you want to ask me what the heck are you thinking or what's going on. I will be preparing my next presentation. So, I will. So in preparation for my next presentation, I'm going to transition real quick. How many of you have never used Xamarin Forms ever? Okay, so we've got some very new folks. Are you wanting to see Xamarin Forms? Okay. How many of you have shipped at least a couple of apps with Xamarin Forms?
The same code base?
From the same what? Different code bases, man. Okay, so we've got a mixture of people that know Xamarin Forms fairly well, and then some people who are being introduced to it. So I'll kind of adjust what I'll talk about to kind of be more middle of the road, and hopefully not leave everybody behind. My initial proposal was going to go pretty deep, pretty fast, because I don't want to waste your time with that. Cool. I think we're good. Thank you very much.